Welcome to Uncloaked Illusions. I'm Chris Anthony, and I want to share a couple topics and also make a couple of announcements. In about 2 weeks, I'm going to be broadcasting my radio station, Blog Talk, and I'm actually sitting down at this moment coming up with the first broadcasting subject matter and ultimately how I'm going to pan this out. This gives the audience an opportunity to call in, have a conversation with yours truly, and ultimately you share your experiences or your knowledge and I share my knowledge, and we ultimately express how we feel, always in a respectful way. And also, I have my own Patreon now. So if you want to support what I'm doing here at this channel and what I'm trying to do as of entirety and abroad, you can support me through Patreon. I'll set up other monetary means to support the platform to get the information out there, to ultimately get the conversation going and to encourage people to join in so that we can create our own movement. Needless to say, look forward to these things transpiring in the next few weeks. Now on to the subject matter at hand. China announces it's imposing new tariffs on 128 U.S. products. China is implementing new tariffs on meat, fruit, and other products from the U.S. as retaliation for new American duties, heightening fears of a potential trade war between the world's two largest economies. We all know that all trade wars ultimately lead to physical war, and I'll leave it at that. Beijing's latest move, announced by its finance ministry in a statement dated April 1st, is direct retaliation against taxes approved by U.S. President Donald Trump on imported steel and aluminum. Chinese officials had been warning over the last few weeks that their country would take action against the U.S. The tariffs began on Monday, the finance ministry statement said. China's Customs Tariff Commission is increasing the tariff rate on pork products and aluminum scrap by 25%. Interesting. It's also imposing a new 15% tariff on 120 other imported U.S. commodities, from almonds to apples and berries. Now, mind you, I've seen a report where business owners that require aluminum and steel were expressing their woes about how it makes it as difficult for them to purchase these particular commodities. And it seems like this is sort of backfiring, because although it's supposed to help to increase that revenue for the small business owner or the business owner in the United States, it's actually doing the opposite now. So there's some backlash going on. All told, the extra tariffs will hit 128 kinds of U.S. products, multiple outlets reported. The list of new duties matches the list released by the government on March 23rd, according to Reuters. At that time, China said the affected U.S. goods had an import value of $3 billion in 2017 and included wine, fresh fruit, dried fruit and nuts, steel pipes, modified ethanol, and ginseng. The White House didn't respond to a message from the Associated Press on Sunday seeking comments. While China's responses was tied to Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, it could end up hurting American ranchers and farmers, many of whom are from regions that voted for Trump in 2016. And I mentioned that this seems to have a backlash because it's hurting those particular businesses that rely on aluminum and steel and getting it at a fair price without having that tax pegged onto it to have it imported over here. So, being that, during 1994, 1995, this NAFTA bill was signed, and a great deal of the jobs were exported, to other countries. Okay, where did I leave off? Okay, yeah. The American pork industry sent $1.1 billion in products, making China the number 3 market for the U.S. pork. Of note, China's trade retaliation is not against Trump's announcement in March that he is planning new tariffs on up to $60 billion in Chinese imports. The White House planned tariffs are partly aimed at punishing Beijing for allegedly stealing American technology and pressuring U.S. companies to hand it over. Now, this is interesting, and I'm just going to take a moment to express this. I had a conversation with a young man from California who was alleging that Beijing had been stealing a great deal of our technology, and I was trying to make sense out of, as Kevin would say from Kevin's Corner, this nonsense, because we all know that a great deal of our, if not all of our technology, it's derived from China or Japan. So ultimately, who's stealing what or who's giving what away at the cost of the American inventors or entrepreneurs? Okay, or technologically savvy entrepreneurs for that means as well. Observers have suggested that Beijing may be saving stronger retaliatory measures for a response that White House has planned. Either way, export economists have repeatedly warned over the last weeks that escalating trade tensions between China and the U.S. could damage the world economy. So this is ultimately getting dangerous. It's getting hot because, as I've mentioned a little earlier, all trade wars lead to physical wars. And this is no coincidence, being that the Chinese launched its yuan, its petro-yuan oil trades contracts on, I believe that was the 26th of March. And this is ultimately going to be competition for the United States petrodollar. And a great deal of countries have already invested in this. It did well its first day, the first few hours. It did extremely well. And it has been doing extremely well since. And I believe a couple days ago, the Chinese announced that they're only going to be accepting yuan for the oil. So now ultimately countries are going to have to purchase the yuan in order to get these oil contracts. So again, another nail in the coffin for the United States. Give me your feedback on this particular story with these trade wars starting and with them seeming to escalate. Where do you think this is leading? I vote it's leading to war. So brace yourself. Needless to say, I'm going to move on to an incident that pretty much transpired in New Orleans, and that has to do with the minimum wage being denied to be increased or to be hiked. And state lawmakers have again rejected an effort to set a minimum wage in Louisiana for the first time that is higher than the federal rate. Then the state Senate rejected legislation meant to address pay disparities between men and women. And, it's ridiculous that we still deal with these disparities between men and women in the workforce. However, I maintain that this is only because this is what happens when you create a society that's ignorant to policies and politics. You don't have people that'll fight back. I'm not waking you, am I? Okay. Minimum wage legislation for the past 3 years, we are all Louisianians, and there is not a single one of us in this chamber, not one, that doesn't have people in our district that would benefit from an increase in the minimum wage. So they are trying to implement SB 162 bill, would be an automatically increasing the minimum wage to $8 an hour in 2019, and then in 2020 I believe it'll increase it to $8.50. So thousands of Louisianians are struggling to live off of a $7.25 an hour, and unfortunately, while the cost of living has increased over the years, their wages have not. So this is what we're dealing with here in New Orleans, is we're dealing with a disconnection between the productivity, the cost of living, and also the wages. We have a constant rise in the productivity. We have a constant rise even in the cost of living, but we have stagnation and even a little regression when it comes to the wages that are supposed to be on par with productivity. And again, I maintain that when you have a culture that's ignorant to policy, when you have a culture that's ignorant to a lot of legislation that is passed in our states, in our cities, and we cannot counter any of this with information that we engage ourselves with, we have no clue what we're fighting. So we will continue to see this disparity between men and women in the workforce, and also we'll continue to see a lack of growth, if not any growth, in the wages to the productivity ratio. It'll always be that stagnation or that regression, because again, we go back to 1973 when the gold standard was removed from the dollar. So the productivity and the wage had ultimately been disconnected at that particular moment, because there's nothing backing our dollar. The dollar literally is worth nothing. And I believe since 1913, the dollar had lost about 98% of its buying power. So just imagine what happens when that 2% is completely eliminated. You will be using your dollars to wipe your ass for the most part, because that's the only thing it'll be worth, probably on par with your toilet paper. I'm Chris Anthony. Give me your opinion about this particular disparity in wages, again, still between men and women, the productivity and the wages and the cost of living disconnection. Like, subscribe, share this video. Please hit the likes. Let's get these subscriptions up, because they are growing at a steady pace. And again, look forward to the broadcast that should be happening about two weeks from now. I'll have some pretty interesting topics. We will be able to engage with each other. You can express how you feel, whether, again, we don't have to have the same opinion. We don't have to agree on things, but all I'm asking and all I require is for you to be respectful about your expressions, and that's it. I'm Chris Anthony, and I'm out.